Ajal get involved, right? That Ajal in simil ye saadil na ehle salat और न ehle शराब न ehle adab और न ehle हिसाब न ehle किताब न ehle किताब और न ehle मशीन न ehle खला और न ehle ज़मीन फ़कत है यकीन अजल इनसे मत कर हिजाब अजल इनसे मिल My name is Ajmal Khattak and I'll be moderating today's session. As you will see, the topic for today's session is comparative study of the poetry of Ajmal Khattak and P.B.Shelley. Right? I hope you are familiar with these two gentlemen. Right? Ajmal Khattak is a famous poet from Persian literature, while P.B.Shelley is a famous poet from English literature. For today's discussion, our distinguished guest is, as you can see, Dr. Nasir Iqbal. Dr. Nasir Iqbal is PhD in English literature and he has been teaching at Edward's College, Peshawar for the last more than 2 decades. And apart from teaching, he has also been directing stage dramas in Edward's for the last 2 decades. Yes. And Edward's College is probably the only place in Peshawar, and not only in Peshawar, I think in the whole province, where stage dramas are enacted. So I warmly welcome you all and our distinguished speaker. So Sir Nasir Iqbal is requested to come and have his seat. Sir Nasir Iqbal. Well, I can see most of the students I know, they are Edwardians and they are from literature. But I know not a few people and your disciplines. So I think we should begin with the the discussion, brief discussion about literature. So how many of you actually have literary backgrounds? Let me ask you this question. Okay, yes. Ilyas, yes, you guys are from literature. And what about you, gentlemen? You're from? Which discipline? Arabic department, right? So you are from Arabic literature, actually. Okay, that's great. Well, as you know that literature is, the expression of the aesthetic aspect of man. There are various aspects of our personalities. Man has this intellectual self, right, which is expressed in philosophy and logic. And there is this spiritual self, which is expressed in mythology and esotericism. Esotericism is the soul, right? The pura sense of the soul. And then, and religion. And then there is our moral self. Moral self is also expressed in our actions primarily. And then there is a very fundamental and very important aspect of humanity, that is aesthetics. That's aesthetics. Man is attracted by beauty, and man needs beauty. That is man's primary instinct, I should say. So this aesthetic self finds expression through different means. Okay? It finds expression through colors. You can see these hangings through different colors. That's called art. Painting. Okay. Then it finds expression through movements, through body movements, and then it becomes dance. Okay. And when that aspect of man finds expression through words, through letters, through literary forms, that is called either in oral or in written, then it becomes literature, right? But apart from giving vent to our aesthetic self, literature also plays a vital role in what is called political activism. It is a means of bringing change in a society, a positive change in a society. So our today's topic is precisely about that political aspect of literature. Yes, we will discuss other aspects of literature, but primarily it is about the the politics of literature, you can say. And as you will see that these two poets, they are, apart from being poets, they are political activists as well. Okay? They engaged in political activism and in bringing reformation in their respective societies. So, and one other thing, for the understanding of literature, because literature is a historical construct, it is situated in a certain context, in a history. It doesn't happen in an abstract vacuum, right? A writer lives in a certain age, and a writer is the product of that literary epoch, with the door of that, right? Historical epoch. So, to begin with, it is important for us to know about the ages of these two poets. So my very first question to our distinguished guest is that what were the historical situation, the political milieu of these two poets? In what kind of world they were living, or what were the influences upon these two writers? What are the things that shape the poetry, the personality, and the outlook of these two poets?
Thank you very much, Jalal, and I'm grateful to the Literature Festival, the movers and shakers of the handling, people like President Rasool and Munir Saab for inviting me on this occasion and for expressing my views about literature and specifically about this topic. Now, these two poets who belong to two different ages, two different nationalities, two different continents. One living in the Romantic age, the early 19th century. Shelley, you all know, lived in the early 19th century, born in the late 18th and lived in the early 19th century. Ajmal Baba, he lived in the 20th century. There were certain the social fabric, the political circumstances, to a greater extent, they were different. Rather, we can say one was Shelley belonged to that nation which was a colonial power, and Ajmal, he belonged to that nation or that era or that part of the world which was suffering under the hegemony of that colonial power. Now, but both Ajmal and Shelley, they were very sensitive people, as poets are. In spite of having these different backgrounds, in spite of that, they have many similarities. And one of the most common thing between the two writers is that their sensitivities and their feelings, and then the way they have looked at their society, right? And both were, as Jalal mentioned, that they were political activists. So in their works, in their poetry, both Ajmal and Shelley, they have touched those strings where where the people, we say that it is common everywhere that the poor, they suffer. So both Shelley and Ajmal, they could feel the sensitivities. Shelley belonged to an era which we call an industrial age, right? It was the rise of industrialization. It had already started. It was a colonial power, but even in that age, the poor suffered. whether they were the early industrial, the early industrial age, or they were people who suffered politically. They were the ones who suffered socially. And similar is the case with Ajmal Khattak. Ajmal, Ajmal lived in that era where the colonial age, it was it was coming to an end. And he played his role. He played his role to combat those colonial powers. But we can say that both Ajmal and Shelley, they raised their voices. They had their voices of resistance against those hegemonic powers which prevailed in the British society as well as the Indian in the Indian subcontinent. So although they lived in different ages, but we still say that they are the ones who raised their voices against all those hegemonic powers who were controlling the society. Like there were individual incidents where, for example, when this bill was passed and early, like in that era, so Shelley, he was a political activist, although there's a difference that Ajmal, he was politically involved, he was politically very active. Shelley was not, like he did not belong to a political party, but still he had his social activism, he had his political activism, and he raised his voice for the downtrodden, who of his own age. So the ages were different, but they were the common theme. These are the common themes in the poetry of Ajmal and Shelley that they have criticized, whether it was the political elite, it was the social elite, it was the industrial elite, it was those forces. Like Shelley, like he even criticized his own country, his own political establishment, which tried to curb those. For example, we can say that when the British government, when they parted against the Greeks at that time, he was the one who really raised his voice. So it's not the case that Shelley was he belonged to a certain class, although Shelley belonged to an elite class himself. He was the son of a rich man, but what happened was that what he did was that he turned against his own family, he turned against his own establishment, as was the case with Ajmal Khattak. Ajmal Khattak, he also belonged to a distinguished family, right? But he became part of the Khudai Khidmatgar movement of Bacha Khan. From the very early age, he had interaction with Bacha Khan when he was a child, because Bacha Khan would come to his hujra, and he was the one, so he got that inspiration from that movement, and then he became an active part of that Khudai Khidmatgar movement. So, two different political backgrounds, two different social backgrounds, but having the common or the same, common and the same cause, which was to raise their voices for the downtrodden sections of the society. So they had a very strong voices of resistance against all those political, social elites.
Yes, sir, you referred to this term resistance a few times in your conversation, and that brings us to another discussion, which is a bit theoretical and general in nature, and that is this conflict between different sections of the society, which is theorized in Marxism and in neo-Marxism. So my question to you is, what is actually the impulses behind this concept of resistance? How can this be conceptualized and understood, particularly in the light of Marxist theory? And how do you connect these two poets with those Marxist ideals?
Both are Marxists. Although, interestingly, Marx lived later than Shelley. But Marx said himself that if I had lived in the age of Shelley, I would have been a strong follower of the ideas of P.B. Shelley. So Marx living later than Shelley, but strongly if you look at his poetry and his ideas and his thoughts, because you see that Shelley had his revolutionary ideas. He wanted a change in the society, and they changed. And he was an anti-monarchist. He was someone who was for the equality. He was for equality. So, as we know, Marxism as a philosophy, Marxism as an ideology, it talks about the common man. It talks about the people who are downtrodden. Ajmal, he himself said that my political ideology is impressed from Bacha Khan, but from inside I am a Marxist. There is this question that whether Ajmal was a nationalist or a Marxist, but Ajmal called himself a Marxist. So, in the poetry of both Shelley and Ajmal Khattak, we see the strains of Marxism, strongly influenced from the ideology, from the thoughts of Karl Marx. Now, we know Marxism is resistance. It is resistance against all those hegemonic powers, against the people, and we can see in the poetry of both Shelley and Ajmal Khattak that they were Marxist in that sense. They speak for equality. They speak for the people who are suffering, whether it's the industrial class, whether it's the socially subdued class. So both of them, Shelley as well as Ajmal Khattak, they were Marxists, and although, and interestingly, Marx lived later than Shelley. But when you look at their works, you will find, whether it's their essay, you will find in their works a strong influence of Marxism, although he lived later than Shelley, but those revolutionary ideas, which talk of the common man, which talk of the poor class, we find in the works of Shelley as well as Ajmal Khattak.
So, in other words, these two poets can be called reformers.
They were reformers. Yes, they were both reformers because they wanted to change the society, right? Well, we know that he lived at an age where India was partitioned, right? When India was partitioned, there was the partition of India. Ajmal Khattak lived, even from his school age, we say that he was as a political activist, through his works, through his poetry. We see that he raised his voice to bring a change, to create political awareness, to make the poor realize that they should raise their voices for their rights. Similar is the case with P.B. Shelley. P.B. Shelley in his poems, Men from England, and many other poems, we see that what they wanted to do is that they wanted the society to be reformed. They wanted the society to be a better society. So there is no doubt that both Shelley and Ajmal, they had a very the kind of life which they lived, where they were never in peace. Sometimes something very interesting. Shelley, throughout his life, and sometimes I think about the life of Shelley, that he never was at peace. He was never at ease. All the time running from one place to another. When there was this Irish Catholic movement, and when the Irish people wanted to get independence, now Shelley was an Englishman, but he went to Ireland and he propagated his idea of a free nation, of a free people over there. He used to write pamphlets, he used to send those pamphlets, and after the Irish movement, when he came back, even in England, he raised his voice against the British monarchy, and at that time when the Greeks were fighting against the Turks, he raised his voice for the Greeks. So whether it was this Irish movement or the English different social and political movements, he played his role as a true reformer to change the society for betterment. And Ajmal, we all know that Ajmal Khattak, even when India was partitioned, when the partition happened, Ajmal Khattak, as we know, that he became a part of the Poetryof movement, and we know Poetryof movement was a reformist movement, and he was strongly affiliated with this movement. And then he had to suffer because of that. He had to go to Afghanistan. He had to live in different places because his ideas or his thoughts, which were not acceptable to the establishment of that time, but he continued to say the truth and reality. Now, Ajmal, in his school life, in his university life, or after university life, he would always be involved in some sort of reformist activity. So, and Ajmal knew that the people of this area, they are politically and socially quite backward. And he had this realization. Now, when he wrote his first book of poetry, the Herat, right? When it was in early 1950s, when it was written and when it was published, as Afrasiya Khattak says that even Ajmal, if he had not written poetry after that, even that one collection would be enough to make Ajmal immortal. To make him immortal. Because the poems in this book, all the poems in this book, they're not only a beautiful example of poetry, but the purpose, the hidden meanings, or the obvious meanings of this book, the Herat Chaga, and the message it communicated. It was not only that he resisted against these forces, and that was the reason that when his first book was published, it was banned in Afghanistan at that time. It was banned here by the establishment. Even the copies were burned in Afghanistan because there was this strong message, this very strong message of a revolution, the kind of revolution which stood for the rights of the common man. After that, his other collections, the Waqt Chaba and many other of his poetic works, whether they were written in Afghanistan or here, there is a very strong message of reforming the society. There is one thing that people always ask question, how can a nationalist be a Marxist? There is one thing like both can be reformers. Now, but I believe that Ajmal's poetry, Ajmal's message is not only for the Pakhtuns, but also for humanity in general. Because when he was ill and he lived in the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia at that time, so if you look at the poetry of that age, so he has written about humanity. So they were both reformers. Shelley was a reformer. Ajmal was a reformer. They speak for the betterment of society in general.
You said you mentioned the Verecha. I think it's on the back of the Verecha, this couplet. Ahl zamane bada zafak falala raza, machira ma machira zaza fakala raza. And there is this ode to West Wind by Shelley, where this image and this metaphor of wind is used for this revolutionary thoughts and ideas. So apart from those thematic commonalities, what are those formal features, particularly those images like the one I just mentioned, this wind, the concept of wind, used by these two poets? Like what are other kind of images and metaphors?
Both are sensitive poets.
And sorry to cut you, because it's a comparative study. And this study is comparative studies are very much into research these days. There is a whole discipline of comparative religions where we compare different religions across the world, right? So I would also request you to chart out how this comparative study is actually conducted. How is it carried out? Just most of these gentlemen I see are from leadership. So if they are interested in comparative studies, how can they pursue this discipline? What is the course, and what to look for in those comparative texts?
As a teacher, I would advise, like literature is something where I strongly believe in the individual right to think freely. And I don't believe that imposing a certain idea, because I believe that everyone is conscious enough to think and sensible enough to think. But I believe that, as you said, that in modern times there is a trend of comparative study. My studies, my PhD thesis, that is comparative study. And I think it is the need of the time. Because comparative study is the study of not only two individuals, it is the study of two cultures. It's the study of two different social and political backgrounds. It's the study of the people who belong to different ages. They all belong to ages, maybe to different geographical scenarios. So, I came to know about. Actually, I am a student of English literature, but through this comparative literature, I came to know about the strains or the voices. My topic is resistance. I came to know about various voices of resistance in, in our culture, in the Western culture, right? So one that you come to know about two different backgrounds of literature, and then you also come to know that how literature modified, shaped the minds of people in different geographies. Like, for example, when I study the Romantics, so I'm a believer that literature is not only for pleasure. Literature should communicate a message, although it should not be a propaganda. It should not be a propaganda. It should not be imposing a certain ideology on somebody. But the hidden meanings or the implicit meanings. So when you study different literatures and you compare those literature, you also come to know that how the societies were changed due to certain works of living of two different geographies or two different social backgrounds. That's why I believe that contemporary literature is important these days. You are able to showcase your own literature to the outside world. Like in my work, I have translated many poems of Ajmal Khattak. Now, maybe my translation that somebody who does not understand Pashto language, that individual will be able to know about the symbols, they would know about the language of Pashto. Similarly, now maybe I am able to communicate who Shelley was. So in this way, one is able through comparative literature to communicate their message to the outside world. And that is very important because in the literature is always universal, but this barrier of language, when you do comparative literature, that is that comes to an end, and you are able to project literature, to project language, the people who do not understand language, or of different social backgrounds. That's why I believe it's very important, and I would rather like maybe advise that yes, students should go towards comparative literature so that they could learn more, they could discover more, they could excavate more different literatures. And it is a trend going on. Recently, there have been so many researches comparing writers from South America and India, comparing European writers with the local authors. So I agree with you that yes, there should be this trend, or there should be this students to be encouraged to study comparative literature.
Okay, sir, I have, since you mentioned refer to the universality of literature, so I have this question, and actually there is a background to this question. How many of you have actually read Shelley's Defense of Poetry? Have you read? Have you heard of it? Defense of Poetry. There is one is Apology for Poetry, which is written by Philip Sidney, right? And then there is Defense of Poetry, written by Shelley, right? In his book, Shelley refers to this universal nature of literature, that literature unites people through the concept of empathy, right? That is actually his main argument, through the concept of empathy, not through didacticism or didacticism, but through the concept of empathy. Why? Because humanity does not share happiness, but it certainly does share misery. And if you have listened to this very famous speech of Charlie Chaplin, which is circulated on social media as well, from the famous movie Dictator. Right? Yes, the speech that let us unite in the name of democracy. So here actually Charlie Chaplin refers to this, that humanity is united by this shared misery. Okay? So, and I'll relate this with another theme, that is hope. So, do you think that these two poets give a certain hope to readers that yes, we can reach a certain land where misery is dominated by happiness? Is there any implicit suggestion of hope in the poetry of these two gentlemen?
Shelley's students are familiar with this very famous poem, Ode to the West Wind. Like hope springs eternal in human breast.
Yeah.
So, this is a very typical example of Shelley's Shelley's philosophy that yes, at the end of the tunnel there is always a hope, and that hope we see not only in Ode to the West Wind, but many other poems. Like there is a hope for humanity, and similarly in the poetry of Ajmal Baba, we also see that yes, there is a hope. It's not only we can say array of hope, but especially in the later part of his life. When Ajmal Khattak, after coming from Afghanistan, when he came back, and he was more into even before that, I gave the example of the Harat Chagha. There is, but later in his poetry, the Bakht Chagha and others, there is definitely a very strong message for humanity that good times coming. A golden age, as he describes it, P.B.Shelley. Yes, there is the message of hope in the works of both Shelley and Ajmal Khattak.
Okay, and I'll extend upon this argument, that yes, we are thrown in a world which is filled with misery, right? There are wars going on. There is this conflict, this class conflict, right? And there is this division between West and East, the first world, the second world, and the third world. Okay, capitalism is creeping upon the entire world. Right? It is deeply entrenched in our economic system, to which But through literature we can connect with the rest of the world. We come to know that yes, we are not alone in our misery. Like we are suffering, people from around the world are suffering as well. So yes, it is a means of connecting with the rest of the world. So that is another dimension to this hope as well. So thank you very much. Now the floor is open if you have any questions. So come with your question, and yes, do come. Yes, Jimmy.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing this information. You mentioned, you discussed about the Marxist perspective or from the Methodist perspective. But I listened to one of his interview, and he said that when I was in the jail or somewhere, I forgot that place, but I got inspiration from the progressives. In Pashto, we can say 30%. So, how, sir, if you could please explain that perspective of Ajmal Khattak?
Like when this All India Progressive Movement started, when Roshnai was written, when it was started, and Sajjad Zahir and
Parchaya, there was
Parchaya,
there was
Sajjad
my
Zahir and many.
family.
Now, when this movement started in England, and then when these all Sajjad Zahir and other when they came, and then slowly and gradually they were spreading their wings in different parts of India. So Ajmal, he joined the progressive writers movement from his very early age, and even those people they visited Peshawar, and Ajmal would even go to Delhi. He met Sahil Byanvi and he met Sajjad Zahir in India. So, and then he brought that inspiration here. And many other people like Muhammad Tufan and many other prominent Pashto writers, they became part of that. Faiz Ahmad Faiz and other writers, they actively participated in that progressive writers movement. Ajmal's interaction with the progressive writers movement, it happened at an early age. Like Ajmal Khattak, when he was in Peshawar, like he lived in Peshawar, he lived in that place called Civil Quarters and Balamari.
Yes.
So his abode, it was the meeting point of progressive writers. And these progressive writers, they not only met at Ajmal's home, but most of them, they were also the early, they were the pioneers when they were in Radio Pakistan. So they were the ones, like initially, Radio Pakistan was like the people over there, most of them, they were progressive right, and Ajmal was part of that group, which would telecast programs, and then there were dramas, and there were poetry. So it was all that group of progressive writers, and then later on, Ajmal's interaction with Faiz Ahmad Faiz, where they used to have various gatherings in interior Sindh, or gathering in Lahore, or wherever there was a gathering. So Ajmal, when it started, so I was referring to that as this question was that how, and I believe that nearly every writer has some sort of progressive tilt, whether it's internal or get the inspiration from outside forces. So it was not only, yes, as you said, that you rightly pointed out that yes, it's internal, but that inspiration coming from the outside sources.
Yes, that progressivism was in the air during this convention, during that era, right? Yes.
Sir, actually, I have two questions. The first question is, as P.B.Shelley says that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. First of all, elaborate this idea, and then tell about, is there any concept found such as how the Ajmal Khattak addressed the poet as P.B.Shelley? And the second question is that we talked about here the political background of both poets, the Ajmal Khattak and P.B.Shelley. As you talk about the sensitivity, feeling, and how they look at the society, we generally talk about it. Sir, if you quote some of the verses from both of
Yes,
these, it will be beneficial for us to understand it.
I would quote some verses from my work, or sorry, I could, because as if we have been so occupied with this drama activity these days, mentally preoccupied.
But the question was
What was your first question?
the
It is how the unacknowledged-
Poets are the unacknowledged legislatures of the world. Wonderful sayings of P.B.Shelley. Right? Now, he said in the context that when uh, like monarchy in England, or the rulers of their time, when they had totally dominated the minds of people, of the British people at their time. Now, there were people like Shelley, and people like, to some extent, William Black or Thomas Paine of that era. They were the ones who stood. Now, this saying of Shelley, the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Now, I think that every poet is an unacknowledged legislature, because poets, as we know, that they are more sensitive, they can feel, they have deeper feelings, so they are able to see the insides of humanity. So certainly from time to time, they have communicated a message where they want to change the world. And these are the people like Shelley, Ajmal, and different writers who have who know how to make the world a better place. So why they are not acknowledged? Because definitely when you stand against a certain group or a certain a certain lobby, so you are never acknowledged. But then later on, people started realizing, people started acknowledging whatever was said at a certain time. Mitwanal says that Shelley is an ineffectual angel, wavering his wings in the air. Now, don't agree with what Mitwanal says about Shelley. Because the job of a poet, of a writer, is to communicate a message. It's not necessary that he should be a political activist, or he should be somebody at the realm of the top of the affair where he could bring his change. But he can bring the change through his poetry, his ideas, and this is what Shelley has done, and this is what Shelley did at the time he lived in the early 19th century. And similar is the case with Ajmal, this political awareness. Sometimes I think that it is said that, especially in our part of the world, people are more aware of their political rights. They are not, if we compare people of this part of the world with people somewhere from Punjab and the interior Sindh, people are clear whatever the restrictions are. And I strongly believe that there are people like Ajmal Khattak, or reformers like Bachatan, or the people of that era who were part of that movement. And poets were a very important part of that. It is that political awareness which still exists, where people are still aware of their rights. They never बॉक्सर कहते हैं कि दूसरी बार वो वोट नहीं देते हैं, या चलो तीसरी बार वो वोट नहीं देते हैं. मेरे ख्याल में it is that awareness, maybe because of that movement. And poets, they have played an important role in creating that awareness among the common people, among the masses. So but maybe they are not acknowledged. They are always anti-establishment. Ajmal suffered for 18 years he lived in Afghanistan. And even before that, the time he spent behind the bars, when he was in class 9, and for the first time, he was put behind the bars. Starting from that era, starting from that very early age, early or days before partition, he was not acknowledged. His books, like this Garat Chaga, the way it was rejected by the establishment of that time. So there was something in his poetry. There was something in his poetry. It was not acknowledged. But we can call him that he was a legislature, and that legislature was still this political awareness we always talk about, and people are more aware. I believe that it is because of these poets that they have created this awareness among the minds. So it happens, they are never acknowledged, and they are never acknowledged in any society, whether it's a very progressive society or an advanced society. They suffer, they come across different hurdles.
Sir, you mentioned in your lines that literature shall not always be political. It doesn't necessarily that it will be. It is always political. You mentioned it. Yes, I will be.
Not political art should be political. I think it's mentioned that literature should be political. Right?
Or
Literature is always political. Yes,
Literature is political.
Okay. So you mentioned the political themes of both, the similarity between their political themes. You didn't talk about the aesthetic themes of the similarities between them. I mean that the artistic similarities between them. You just refer to one thing that was, I guess that's why I refer to that point. Baad wala, wine, wind wala. Yes. So, sir, if you look at the love philosophy of the P.B.Shelley, and there are certain points of the Ajmal Khattak, there are some of the similarities between them. Do you have any reference for it, or do you want to?
I've got so many references for that, but I would like to read from my laptop. Sorry for that. Both Ajmal and Shelley, they had the musicality. They are both very musical. They are both fluid. They are both easy to understand. The symbols, their symbols, their aestheticism, it's one of the dominating feature of their works. Like the poems in the, look at the Ode to the West Wind. It's so musical. The symbols used, symbols of wind and the different. Look at the works of Ajmal Khattak being always recited in political gatherings. Nekan पैदा दी घटान पैदा दी बिल्कुल नजाया जनतियान पैदा दी zeich agile janat uju sufi the more jantiyan पैदा दी. One of very famous lines of, but look at you talk about the aesthetics, look at the musicality along with the message it communicates. Look at the musicality in it. or his poem Faisala, one of the most beautiful poems, Faisala. Many other of his Dalol Qudratun Ulama. So, like, there is a strong, a musical or aesthetics feature both in the poetry of Ajmal and this P.B.Shelley.
And sir, he spent many of his years behind the bar. So did Shelley play the same music for his political writing?
Shelley, as I mentioned earlier, that Shelley was a very restless soul. Definitely, he was persecuted after his Irish campaign. That Shelley died very young, right? But a very important part of his life he spent in Rome. He spent in Switzerland. What were the reasons? Because he was not allowed to live in England. He did not go to the jail, but he did not live in England. He died outside his own country. So this persecution, and see, any writer, any poet who has this tilt towards, or he's against the establishment of the era, he's never at peace. So, Ajmal in Afghanistan, 18 years, in different parts in prisons, and suffered a lot. In utter jail, in the prison in Peshawar, the way he was persecuted, the way he was treated. Now, whenever there is this, these days that certain people are being persecuted, and I say that people have not heard the way the way these people have been persecuted in
Azab Pagal is one of the examples.
yes, his very famous work, Azab Pagal. So, and there are so many of like him, and this persecution was very severe. One could not think of that.
Yes, and this, this auditory aspect of poetry is very much important. As the students of literature, you should know that meaning is not always about images and the semantics. Like meanings are not always visual and semantics. Meanings are auditory as well, right? And yes, the ahang, just Urdu mein ahang kehte hain, right? So not only the image, not only the meaning of the words, which are called semantics, right? But the ahang is also important, right? So I would like to end up our today's session with a poem from Iqbal, just to illustrate upon this, these aspects of literature. Now there is a famous poem, Iblis se Jibreel, right? Iblis se Jibreel. And there are difficult words in it. लेकिन मैं उनकी मीनिंग्स आपको नहीं बताऊंगा. आप सिर्फ इसके उसको देखें, आहंग को देखें. मैं उस तरह नहीं कर पाऊंगा, लेकिन ये आपको तब पता चलेगा जब आप जो है वो हमारे जो फेमस नरेटर हैं उर्दू के ज़िया-उल-दीन कमर को, उनको जब आप सुनेंगे तो आपको पता चलेगा कि मीनिंग के लिए ये आहंग जो है कितना इम्पोर्टेंट है. मैं कोशिश करता हूँ, लेकिन आप सिर्फ इसको
if you don't mind, better to recite words from the Ajmal Khattak.
Okay, let me share, and I would like to share my translation, my own translation of some of. Remember that Ajmal, this famous book, the Arab Chala, has been translated by Dr. Taiziri, Dr. Shirzaman Taiziri.
Yes.
Beautiful translation, very rare these days. I got a copy of it, but I do give a photocopy, but I do not share it because somebody was asking me. It's very rare, beautiful. And then I have translated many of his poems. for my research, and this one is a very good translation, very poetic translation. This Dr. Shazaman Saizai of Ajmal Khattak, the first collection, the Gharat
पश्तो मैं इसलिए नहीं सुना रहा कि आप समझते हैं ना फिर तो मेरी बात लिखे नहीं
नहीं उसमें भी ऐसी बात है जो किसी को इतना आसानी से समझ नहीं
चलो
आता।
खैर मैं आपको सुनाऊंगा जरूर ठीक है अगर देखिए मैं सिर्फ ये कह रहा हूँ कि हमेशा समझना जो है में सारी मीनिंग नहीं होती अगर आप समझते हैं तो कुछ मीनिंग जो है वो लेफ्ट हो जाती है ऐ हमद में देरी ना कैसा है जहाने रंग हू सोज व साज व दर्द व दाग व जुस्तजू व आरज़ू हर घड़ी अफलाक पे रहती है तेरी गुफ्तगू क्या नहीं मुमकिन कि तेरा चाकी दामन हो रखूं आह ए जिब्रील तू वाकिफ नहीं इस राज से कर गया सरमस्त मुझको ठूट कर मेरा सबू अब यहाँ मेरी गुजर मुमकिन नहीं किस कदर खामोश है ये आलमे बेकाबू जिसकी उम्मीदी से हो सो जो दुरूने कायनात उसके हक में तक न तू अच्छा है या ला तक न तू खो दिए इनकार से तूने मकामाते बुलंद जिब्रील इब्लीस को कह रहा ठीक है चश्मे अज़दा में फरिश्तों की रही क्या आबरू है मेरी जुर्रत से मुश्ते खाक में ज़ौक़े नमू मेरे फितने जामे अक्ल व खिरत का तारुकू देखता है तू फकत साहिल से रज़्म व खैर व शर कौन तूफा के तमाचे गा रहा है मैं कि तू खिज़र भी बेदस्तपा इलियास भी बेदस्तपा मेरे तूफा यम बयम दरिया बदरिया जू बजू गर कभी खलवत मुयस्सर हो तो पूछ अल्लाह से किस्से आदम को रंगी कर गया किसका लहू मैं खटकता हूँ दिले यज़्दा में कांटे की तरह तू फकत अल्लाह अल्लाह
It's not always igual cuando la हालांकि इकबाल की जो पुख्तून में पा रहा हो या अफगान में पा रहा दूर से भी इमाम बखैर से इकबाल की खुद हम पंजाबी हो इकबाल और कश्मीरी होगा ना और इकबाल जिसमें शायरी की आगे की पुख्तून जिसमें लाकर है बुरा निश्चय तो बोला फितरत के मकासद की करता है निगरानी या बंद है सहराई या मर्द को इस्लाम नो मर्द को इस्लाम ने मुराद है को शुद्ध जैसे और ब्या महराब गुल अफगान के अफकार दा यो टिपिकल पुख्तून कैरेक्टर को ब्या जाइन अलावा तो पूरा जे खुशाल बाबा वाला चुकुम खबर आ गया कि है दा दा का खबर है खुदा तासुब चुकुम देगा दा का हर लेवल पर खराब है बिल्कुल जैसे लो कि चुकुम जहालत देगा ना दा जहालत वली खान ने जो पूरा अगर इकबाल पढ़ दिए होम जो ना
इकबाल बोले शायद
तो खबर है जी इतनी सुंदर भरोसे ये भरोसे सब जगह पे कट कर
Ni ba abu ke na tajizo ralar zawalam parawalam da azad pachaga jangawalam de kambakht bajilunu ki tadalam zade harzur aur zyati ki klakawalam e zaman da sar da pas shin asmana tajidasi pa halo bikhawalam when he was in prison particularly her waqt foladawalam. My translation is that you provoked me, incited me, that you made me fight on the name of freedom. You made me fight on the name of freedom. These ill-fated imprisoned me. These ill-fated imprisoned me. I got strengthened with all the coercion and persecution. O heaven, o'er my head, you would awaken me. O heaven, over my head, you would awaken me by being beaten physically. You hardened me in the furnace of time. You hardened me in the furnace of time. There we he says further, Mulk पकर्जों के गर्भ दे उलस दलुगी नमरी वाइज दहुरु पगम के लीडर उसेख पलवी The country is immersed in debts. Masses are dying of hunger. The preacher dreams of virgins. The leader acquiesces to the chair. ستا پخوانو او سرو ته سلام ای زمانه ستا رنگینو ته سلام هغه د یو تار قتلی ګورې هغه د بل پورې تړلی ګورې salute to all those old and new O time salute to your luster that the kite flies with one string here the puppet is tied with the other threads.
Yeah.
چې د زلمیانو نه زلمی جوړوي دغه تعلیم او تربیت مې ولید They'd make eunuchs of wives. I saw such education and training. د شازلمی وینې غورځنګ تېزوم په پښتني وینې کې رنګ تېزوم په خپله خاوره خپل عزت جوړوم خان ته جونګړه د غیرت جوړوم I warm up the blood of youth. I warm up the honor in Pakhtun's blood. I build up my image on my soul. I built the hut of honor for me. Hut of honor for me. So there's some translation. Poverty becomes the funeral in life. غریبی چې په ژوندي جنازه شوه معاشره د ژوندینو ادیره شوه دا دنیا د سړیتوب کسابخانه شوه دا قاتل ډاکو ځان ستا غل دی ستا ځان ته غل دی که په خوله کې کلیسه شوه که کعبه شوه Poverty becomes funeral in life. The society becomes the graveyard of living dead. This world becomes the slaughterhouse of humanism. The murderer and the looter are in the hideout. Apparently, he speaks of Kaaba and church. These are my translations of different words of Ajmal. د ژوند په غم کې ککړو غریبانو دا چې ستا دولت د ستاسو له همت دی همت مه پیلې راپاسې اواز وکړئ مشران وایي حرکت کې برکت دی Oh poor people sunk in the sorrow of life that your strength is your determination don't get disappointed raise your voice together the sages say he finds who tries He finds who tries. They're all my translations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. And thank you all for participating in the session. I'd like to invite the speaker to come and offer this shield or distinguished guest. Thank you.